Hi, and welcome to Some Assembly Required, the video blog edition. This week we're going to talk about how to help our kids behave. Now that may seem kind of funny to you. Don't kids know how to behave? Well, the answer is yes and no. As I talked about in last week's video blog about consequences and why they're necessary, this week we're going to talk about how to give our kids the tools they need so that they can behave. Now, there are some children who behave beautifully. Something about their internal motivation helps them to behave better than other kids. But in my experience, most children need help in knowing how to overcome those misbehavioral tendencies. So we're going to talk about two specific things. We're going to talk about how to give our kids a vision, and this is especially important as your children get older and when you can have more in-depth conversations with them about it. And then we're going to talk about building responsibility in kids. And these are going to help develop that conscience of our children. Remember, we talked about how consequences are that check on their conscience. But now we're going to work specifically on building that conscience. So let's talk a little bit about how vision inspires a child to change. There are 5 ways to provide children with vision. Number 1 is you appeal to their maturity. I know I've said to my kids, for example, when they're in kindergarten, you know, you're a kindergartner now. This is how we behave. You're older now. You have more responsibilities, and with those becoming more privileges, and with those come more responsibilities. This will help you grow and become more independent, which is what our children really want. And when we have a problem, when our child is struggling with a problem, we give them the vision to overcome it by saying, hey, you know what? You need to practice overcoming this. Just like they have to practice tying their shoes and being able to pour milk and eating with a spoon, and riding a bike and practicing a sport. We seem to have no trouble helping our kids to practice being a better soccer player. But we often forget that they need to practice being a better human being. Developing a new skill. I often tell my kids that some of these behavioral corrections don't come easily to them. So, for example, a kid who struggles with anger. Well, they need to know that they can, with practice, reduce their anger outbursts. Reaching a goal. This is where we tell our kids, oh, well, you know, you will learn to ride your bike without training wheels, but you have to practice. You will get better at the piano, but you have to practice. And this is the same with life skills, and with those mastering their emotions and helping them become a better human being is practicing some of these things. And you can also help them say that by practicing giving them this vision, help them contribute to the greater good, something bigger than themselves. Kids need to realize that they are not the be-all, end-all of society, of our family, of themselves. There's something bigger than they are. And helping them see, well, you know, mastering your anger is good for you, but it's also good for our family. It's also good for your classmates. It's also going to be good for you when you're an adult. And I also like to, little side note for parents, remember, we're not raising kids. We're raising adults. And when you think about it, you don't want your 5-year-old to be struggling a lot with anger, for example, when he's 25. You want to help him have the skill set and the tools to not be struggling so much. And this is something he may constantly have to keep an eye on, because we all have areas of our life where we tend to stumble more than others. But we can always reduce the amount of time we spend struggling with that. Now let's talk about building responsibility in kids. There's an easy way to do this. And by easy, I mean this is the easy way for us to remember how to do it. There's 3 C's to help our kids three C's, the letter C, to help our kids build responsibility within themselves. They are cues, conscience, and character. Now let's talk about cues. So many times what we as parents do is wrong is that we are the cue. We're the ones who are telling our kids, do this now, do this now, do this now, and do this next, instead of putting the responsibility of remembering and figuring that out on our kids. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, if I did that, nothing would get done. Not exactly. We need to move those cues from mom or dad in some cases to the child and to an outside cue. Here's an example. So my two younger children are boys and they're in elementary school. And a couple of years ago, I realized I was running their morning. I was saying, it's time to eat breakfast, it's time to get dressed, it's time to do this chore, it's time to do that chore, is your backpack ready? Now, and of course, they were willing to let me do that. And then I realized that's not good for me because I have to keep track of them and me. They're old enough to keep track of themselves. They need an outside cue. So we came up with a list. They wrote down a list of everything they had to do in the mornings before school. And I posted it on the fridge and I said, okay, so now instead of telling them to go do a specific thing, I refer them to that cue of the list. I say, have you done everything on your list this morning? And that has helped them trigger and go, oh, they'll go and read the list and then they mentally can go through, yeah, I did everything, but I didn't brush my teeth. That's what I mean by outside cues. We also have a cue on our dishwasher. When it's clean, we put a little magnet on top of it that says clean. Imagine that. And so the kid who has to unload the dishwasher is supposed to, when he's in the kitchen, is supposed to look at that dishwasher and go, oh, that's clean. I need to unload it. We have cues as to what day of the week it is. I used to host a women's Bible study on Wednesday mornings, which meant I needed the house clean on Tuesday. So I would tell the kids, remember it's Tuesday. That was their cue to go look at their Tuesday chores and do it. I do it on Wednesdays when it's bath night. Remember it's Wednesday. And that way they kind of remember, okay, yeah, what day of the week it is, what we want. So those are the kind of cues we're going to give our kids. Now, we all have a conscience. And as we've talked about before, consequences help to strengthen that conscience. But it's also, we also want to strengthen it in other ways because we wanted to remind our kids of what they're supposed to do. So, because there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things, right? Do they just jump up from the table when we're done eating? Not in our household. They wait and ask to be excused. How do they respond to a sibling who's annoying them? How do they manage their time? These are all things that our conscience does. And so part of the way that we're training through these cues is to strengthen that conscience. And if mom or dad, it's most likely moms, let's just be honest here, are acting as that conscience for our kids, the kids don't get a chance to strengthen it on their own. This is where consequences come in, but this is also where cues come in and where we don't jump in to fix problems or we don't jump in to remind our kids of what to do. And then there's character. The character helps, we're building the character in our kids, and it helps give them a sense of obligation on the inside. And so that's why we hold them accountable. That's why we don't necessarily do the chore that they missed. We have them do it, and maybe we add a consequence to it so they'll remember better next time. So just to recap, let's give our kids a vision. Let's appeal to their maturity. Let's help them say, this is going to help you overcome this problem. You're going to develop a new skill. You're going to reach a goal, and you're going to contribute to something greater than yourself. And then let's also work with our kids on giving them external cues and helping them see those cues and use them to remind them of their responsibilities and what they need to do. And this will strengthen their conscience and strengthen their character. Thanks for joining me this week on the Some Assembly Required video blog. I'll hope you come back next week.